Okay, there we go. So, all right. First question, Mary Margaret.
This is real simple and it has to do with terminology.
Sure.
I'm working on shaping the raglan armholes and I'm using the crib sheet. And the language starts using this phrase, decrease one stitch at the raglan edge of next row. Decrease one, this at the raglan edge is used repeatedly instead of at the end of the row or on the wrong side, or, I was just kind of thrown by that different, like, why is that said that way? Do you know?
Um, if you're looking at the crib sheet, are
Mhm.
you knitting the old pattern?
I think somebody, when I emailed into Dizzy Knitter, she thought I was using the old one, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So you also are using the old one, so you can use the crib sheet. Um, so let me look at this.
It's on.
The crib sheet helps with just the terminology, even with the new
Mhm.
pattern. So it's not
That's what
very helpful.
Yeah.
that's what I was hoping would happen as well. You ask why it's written that way,
Mhm.
and there's no good
Okay.
answer for that. It's simply written that way because the person who originally wrote the pattern wrote it that way.
Okay. Okay.
And so I
know.
realize that's not a very good answer, but
No, I just wasn't sure. Okay, is this some other, I don't know, it just threw me for a bit. The other kind of related, and then this is all I have, talks about fasten off. Is that the same as binding off?
yeah. Where are you
Okay, at the end
looking?
of shape raglan armholes, left to front, the very bottom of the page. You're done with this.
Oh,
It
when
says
you fasten off, you means that you pull the yarn through the last loop that you have. You're
Okay.
fastening it off.
I've never
Yeah.
heard. Okay. All right.
Again, just the terminology by the
Yeah.
person who
Okay.
wrote the
That's
pattern.
real
Yeah.
simple. Okay. That's all I have right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. You're welcome. You're welcome. That was easy. All right. Who's next?
I have,
All right.
sorry. I have, I'm just a newbie knitter. So on the second page of the instructions where we have shape front neck. Okay, let's see if I'm just referencing this right. It says knit two together, knit five and turn. What does turn mean?
Turn your work over
Okay.
so that you are ready to knit going the other direction.
It says then leave remaining 18 or 20 or whatever stitches on a holder. And then I'll have 6 stitches left. Okay, with those 6 stitches, and again, this is going to be on the wrong side. Is that correct?
That is correct. Once you've turned, first you start on the right side. Once you've knit two together, knit 5 and turned.
Okay, turn. So I'm going to have 6 stitches left, and at that point, I'm going to decrease 1 stitch at the neck edge. I don't know what they call this, of the next 3 rows, and at same time, I don't know what that means. Decrease 1 stitch at raglan armhole edge of.
It means that you don't do them concurrently. I'm going to first tell you what you don't do before I tell you what you do. You don't decrease 1 stitch at the neck edge of the next 3 rows and then decrease 1 stitch at the raglan armhole of the second row. You don't do it concurrently, one after the other. I mean, you don't do it consecutively, one after the other. You do it concurrently. You do it at the same time. You decrease 1 stitch at the neck edge of the next 3 rows, but at the same time, you decrease 1 stitch at the raglan armhole edge of the second row. So let me say this again. You decrease 1 stitch at the neck edge of 1 row. And then on the second row, you decrease 1 stitch at the neck edge of that row. and also 1 stitch at the raglan armhole edge, because that's the second row.
Okay. And then I'll decrease the 1 more stitch on the 3rd row, and then I'll have 2
Right.
stitches left, and I knit them
Right.
together.
Right. And fasten off, which means to cut off
Right.
your yarn and pull it through the loop.
Okay.
It's like learning, kind of like learning another language. It's
It is
very
enduring.
literal. It's very literal. So it is figure outable, you know what I mean?
Right.
But you kind of have to stop and say, okay, so then I decrease on 1, I decrease at both edges on the 2nd row, I decrease again to make my 3rd decrease on the neck edge. And and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like a word problem in math, because you kind of go, I've got to come to 0 and I've got to figure out how to get there.
Yes, you're 100% correct. Yeah. Okay, and Elizabeth. Oh, you're still muted. Can you unmute?
There. Now can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, sorry about that. I did come late. I'm doing this in the round. So is 1 round, that's 1 row, correct?
Yeah. So you're doing all the pieces together at the same time?
No, I just mean I'm knitting in the round when I'm doing them. So do you do this on straight needles, or do you usually use a
I
round?
use circulars, but I'm
Circulars.
not sure how you would knit a cardigan in the round. If you mean to say that you're knitting on circular needles.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah, okay.
Circular needles. So the garter stitch and stockinette stitch are different, with the circular, or not really, because they're not joined.
They're not joined. You are in effect knitting flat.
Okay.
You're only using circular needles for your convenience, which I always do. So I understand that. But in theory, you treat it like you're knitting with straight needles.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure on that. So I don't worry about knitting in the round with garter with standard stitch or stockinette stitch. I'm just doing what you say on here.
Exactly.
Okay. And then how do I get your crib sheets?
Well, first of all, are you knitting the old pattern or the new pattern?
I don't know, because I came in late, so
can you hold up the pattern that you are knitting? Let me make you larger and I might be able to tell. You are knitting from the new pattern. So the crib sheet, that was the whole situation with the crib sheet, is it doesn't, it was written for a quotes old pattern, which the numbers will be off. Now, like Jane and some others have said, the crib sheet still does help if you want to use it as a means to understand how to interpret the pattern, and not as a means to not try to get it to.
No, I just need it to help me understand what's going on.
Very good. I will post it again here, which I'm happy to do. Let's see, where's the quickest way? Let me just do it right now while I'm thinking about it.
One way to tell might be the different numbers and things, like when I started, it said to cast on 42 stitches for left front. And I think.
Yeah, she's knitting with the new one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm making the 8 to 9-year-olds one. So I have to kind of go to, when you're talking, go to, just follow you on that one.
Exactly, because there was not a size 8 to 9 that I translated. There is no crib sheet for size 8 to 9. I'll give it to you for size 2 to 3.
Oh,
So
okay. Well, that's good to know too, because I would have been like, ah,
it says it on the crib sheet that
okay.
the link that I just gave you. It tells you which size it is. But if you use it as a language interpreter, so to speak, as to help you just understand, like fasten off, what does that mean? I don't
Right.
know, different things like that.
Okay.
And that crib sheet was never meant to be used alone.
As
And
the
I think
okay.
people thought that, I said it right at the top. It is not meant to be used alone. It is simply meant to help you interpret the pattern.
Okay.
Um,
So how do I get it then? You posted it.
there's the link there in the chat. Can you click on the link?
Oh, I see that.
Yeah, and then you'll be able to download.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay. Who's next? Everyone's stunned into silence. Mona.
So I was curious what I'm using the Jody Long yarn. I was curious what method you recommended for joining a new ball.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask.
Oh, my favorite way of joining is a spit splice for all wool and such. It doesn't work very well for super wash spit splicing. I don't use spit because I just think it's gross, but I use water. And I have out there somewhere, I have a little video showing, but let me grab some Jody Long yarn. This is what I would do. Do you know the Russian join, Mona? Yeah, that's what I use with superwash yarn. And let's see, since I don't have a camera, let me get a YouTube. The Russian join is my second favorite way to join yarn. And this is a good link. So I just put a link into the chat for the Russian join. And it just involves taking a sharp needle, threading it on one end and creating a loop. Well, here we can play it for everyone. Hold on. I want to make sure that the okay, can everyone see?
Yes.
Can you see my screen? Okay, well, let me just play this and you guys can see exactly. This is a wonderful way to join. And you can hear it as well, or no?
No.
Can't hear. That's because I can't.
What was the name of this? Oh, Russian join.
This is of yarn that doesn't require any knots or weaving in ends.
Okay.
Let's get right in and take a look at how it works. So I'm going to begin by cutting just some fresh tail ends, which will make the whole process a little bit easier. Now let's just say that this darker blue end is the project that I'm working on. This is the yarn that's attached to the project I'm working on. And then this lighter blue end is the yarn that I want to add in. And so I'm going to start with the dark blue end. And I'm just going to get the yarn on the needle there. And now what I'm going to do is leave just a little bit of a tail end. And then I'm going to, into the working end of the yarn, I am going to run my blunt yarn needle in between the plies of yarn. And so you can see here that if you just gingerly move the needle through the center of the strand of yarn, you go right through the plies of the yarn.
It's worth noting that this technique does not work well for unplied yarns. So that would be any yarn that doesn't have a twist to it. Examples of unplied yarn are roving wool, chenille, anything that's like faux fur. It wouldn't work for those yarns.
You don't want to do this for too far because this method does add a little bit of bulk to the join, the area of the join. So once we've got about that much, what we want to do is just carefully pull the tail end through. So I am going to get the tail end. You can see it's kind of in the middle of that loop there. The loop is what we're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to pinch right along here and just pull the tail end through. Now, once you can get it out, just go ahead and set down this side. We'll leave that loop just right there. Okay, so now we're going to thread the other tail end. Now, before I go ahead, what we're going to do is do the same thing with this side, but the first thing I need to do is thread this yarn through this loop. So we're just going to bring it through. Okay, so now I've got my loose end on this side, and then this is the working end of the yarn. And so I'm going to take the blunt yarn needle and go through the working end of the yarn. And we're going to do the same thing where we just carefully work right through the middle of the yarn, just separating the strands, the plies of yarn with the blunt yarn needle. Great, that looks like enough. And so now I'm just going to carefully pull the needle through again. Feels like this side is the tail end. Maybe, nope. There we go. Okay, now we're going to get the needle off of there. Now you can kind of see what's going on here. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to tighten the tail ends of both sides, and that's going to join them together really neatly. So just pinching up that gather of yarn there, pulling the tail end nice and taut. And again with the opposite side. Okay, and now at this point, what you can do is just smooth out the plies that you gathered. You can see that is a nice tight joint of yarn that's not going to come undone. And it's not too much more bulky than the actual strand of yarn. It is a bit, but not by much. So at this point, you can see the tail ends are still just sort of dangling there. And all you need to do is trim them.
That is genius.
The edge of where you trim the tails is going to be the bulkiest part of this. Okay, guys, so
that's how you do that. And everybody still hear me? Yes. Okay. So is that helpful, Mona?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Uh-huh. You're welcome. Okay. Jane, you're looking intently. Do you have any other questions?
Well, I mean, when we're joining the raglan seams, we're just sewing those together. And you said something last week about you don't sew the edges, you go in one.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
that is correct. And I can find a YouTube video that you can use at home. I probably won't play it right now, but um, you use the mattress stitch. And let's oh, this is a good one.
Leg your
And I will put this in the chat. So you can use that to learn how to sew your two edges together. Look at this, watch this, and then realize that when you're sewing raglan, it's going to be at an angle and you're going to have decreases. So it's not going to look as perfect as the example that they're going to use to show you how to do the mattress stitch. Watch the mattress stitch. I'm not sure there's anything that shows in particular the a raglan method of doing it. You know what I mean? You just need to, you know, start picking up your stitches at a place that you determine, you know, in one stitch. And remember, the edge is kind of the first stitch. So make sure it's all uncurled and this whole steaming thing that I went through last week so that you can find that edge stitch easily and you're not biting in so far that you're taking loads of the fabric and you have a really bulky inside. You want one full stitch. And then once you determine where you're going to start sewing, then stick with that. Try to follow the same pattern. Try to pick it up in the same exact place every time.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. That's very helpful.
Okay. All right. Everybody's so quiet today. Oh, is it raining where you all are? It's
Oh, yeah.
not, and it is in some places. I know.
Do you remember last week we were talking about how a couple of us mentioned that as you're pulling the yarn out of the center of the ball, it was like it was over plied and was twisting on itself? I wanted to show you what that looked like. It's like this, and it's the whole way through the end. I'm almost done with the ball, and it's been this way through the whole ball where I'm keeping push the extra twist along.
Yeah.
So it's like the yarn wasn't set properly, I guess, because it
I
twists
don't know.
back up on itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I've run
like
into
that.
that a lot throughout my knitting life. It's kind of something I also, as I mentioned last week, I would take this yarn from the outside of the ball and not from the inside. That's just, it's kind of the path of least resistance. Yeah. Joyce, how are things going with you? You haven't said anything yet today.
I just got started on this yesterday, so it's I mean, it's coming. It'll get there. I'm understanding what you're talking about, so that made me happy. And so far, from what I'm reading on the pattern, it's going, I'm going, okay, so she explained this, that, and the other. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it'll be okay.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Jane
so
is absolutely right. I hadn't thought of describing it that way, but it is kind of like a word math problem,
yeah.
step at a time. Yeah. It kind of
Yeah.
makes your brain go, what? But on the other hand, I don't know, I am not a mathematician, and math is not my first language by any means. But there's something about doing something like this that I like, I enjoy. It's kind of like, oh, I figured this out. Like I'm learning Italian right now, and it's kind of the same feeling that I get when I'm learning another language. It's like, oh, it's kind of like a different words can be used to mean the same thing in different languages. It's like a different language kind of anyway.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
have a question that I think you went over last week.
sure.
These storms that we've been having in Springfield, Missouri, I've lost my laptop, so I have you on my phone.
Oh.
And then anyway, so I cast on, I've just got the ribbing finished, knitted the first row. So I'm on the back where it says to decrease 1 stitch at the end of each. I'm doing size 6, 7. So I'm doing it at the end of the 11th row. And then I don't know what it means by and. Does it mean repeat 4 times, or I don't know what the following 10th row is?
So you're at, excuse me, you're at the back.
Right. And I've done the knit 6 rows and then knit 1 row.
Okay.
Begin with a knit row, now work in stockinette stitch as follows. So I understand the decrease 1 stitch at the at each end of the 11th row, but I don't know after the and what that means, how many times, or
yeah, that's exactly what we've been talking about, this way of figuring out what this language means. So it says and, so you would be 4, correct? That's the
yes.
size you're at. You would be 4 of the following 10th rows. So that means you knit 9 and then you decrease on the 10th. That's 1 time. You knit 9 and you decrease on the 10th. That's 2 times. You knit 9, you decrease on the 10th. That's 3 times. And repeat one more time, knit 9, decrease on the 10th. That's 4 times. That's 4 of the following 10th rows. So the rows that are coming up, the following rows, every time you hit a 10th row, you do it 4 times. If they would have said 2 of the following 10th rows, you would have done it only 2 times. But because it says 4, you're going to do it 4 times. So knit 9, decrease. That makes 1 of the following 10th rows. Knit 9, decrease again. That makes 2 of the following 10th rows. I realize I'm repeating myself, but does that make sense?
Yes, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to have 80 stitches left, but it's because it seems like I'm decreasing more than that.
So you're decreasing 1 stitch every time. So you've already decreased 1. So you're going to decrease 4 more. So that makes 5. And that means you need 80 stitches at the end.
Yes.
And you started out with
90. And so I decreased 2 stitches.
Oh,
after
at each end. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I read that wrong. I'm sorry. It's 2 each time. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
So I decreased 2 on the 11th row.
No.
Oh,
yeah. That's the first one. That's the first one.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So that's 2 stitches.
Okay.
4 more times you will decrease 2 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and that means 10 stitches you will have decreased. So
all right.
yeah.
Right. I may have it now. We'll see.
I have to get out my fingers. I'm sorry. I'm not good with math.
I usually cheat and just do a piece of paper and check.
Right,
So,
right,
so that I keep track of that.
right. So you'll be
Okay.
80, so you'll be absolutely correct. And then you just continue on until the back measures 21
8 1/4.
centimeters or 8 1/4. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All righty.
And it
Thank
will
you.
seem short. You're welcome. And it will seem short, but it's because you're going to knit a whole yoke. You know, you got a
Right.
whole bunch more to knit at the top. That's number one. And if you're knitting one of the smaller sizes, you know, newborns don't have a lot of distance between their arm and their hips or whatever, you know, there's not a lot of space there. So the sweater, I mean, if you want to knit it longer, knit it as long as you want, you know, but I'm just saying, don't be alarmed if it looks really short. I realize you are not knitting a short one, but, or a small one.
No, no,
Some-
I'm trying to get ahead of her this time. I've already done the newborn 1, 2, and she's got a 3. So I'm going bigger.
I think you're wise.
Yeah.
I think you're
I'm
wise.
afraid she's gonna outgrow me if I don't start on the bigger sizes earlier because they'll take longer.
That's
So.
right. That's right. All right, Elizabeth,
Okay.
you're muted again. Oh, no, you're not, but I can't hear you. Why can't I hear you? Says you're not muted. That's very strange. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to mute you myself, and then you're going to need to unmute. Maybe we'll get the gremlins out of the wires that way. Okay, I've muted you. Now I requested you to unmute. Maybe that will work. No, I can't hear you. Something on your end. Do you want to type your question in the chat? Yeah, go ahead and type your question in the chat. That would be great. That would be great. Anyone else while she's typing her question?
At some point, it'd be nice if you could just, the yoke part could just translate that into English.
Okay. And you're doing the new, right?
I'm doing the, yes, the new, but there's just, yeah, just English kind of.
Okay. I will do that are you in the Facebook group?
I am. I don't do it. I haven't.
Yeah, and that's fine. I was just thinking of a way to let you know when it was done.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great.
Which size are you making? Because I'll only do it for one size, likely, and then
I'm
everyone.
making the 1 to 2 year old. And I do have a question.
1, 2, 3.
When we cast off, it says I had 40 stitches left, like on the first page. So I'm doing the second size, so that's 40. Is that correct? Stitches?
Where are you on the first page?
If I was on in the back, I'm looking at the back,
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Okay.
Shape raglan armholes, and I had 40 stitches left. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Middle of the page.
Well, the back, after you've decreased, says you have 62. Is that true? 1, 2, 3. 62 stitches? Are you at the back?
The shape raglan armholes on
Oh,
the
the shape
page.
raglan armholes. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, I was up at the back. Okay, shape raglan armholes. Yes.
40 stitches that I cast off. Okay, if you go to the yoke and none of those stitches match.
Well, you're going to, I'll write it out, but
Okay.
You'll slip
You're
a
going to
bunch
lose a stitch when you join them, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, a math problem.
Right. It's kind of sometimes, I know, I think I said last week when I was doing the Tivoli shawl knit along, it was like everybody read to the last and they were freaked out of how to do that. But it's kind of like if you just have faith, keep moving it'll start making sense. It's like, oh, okay. So it's a little bit of logic and it's a little bit of faith. Oh, is needed. Okay. Elizabeth, did you type the question? Oh, you are typing. Okay. I will
I
continue.
can take that time while she's typing in
Sure,
and ask another
absolutely.
question.
Mhm.
So I'm knitting the front here,
Beautiful.
and I think it come you can see, and it's supposed to be, I know that the stockinette stitches are longer than the garter stitches are, and so it kind of
Yeah.
it's gonna pull. So does that come out when you're steaming it, that you're gonna have to just kind of
It comes
stretch it?
out. Yeah, it comes out when you're steaming it. That's number one. Number two is the fact that remember when you knit the old pattern, as I was saying to Elizabeth at the very beginning, you knit it just slightly shorter so that you stretch it just a little bit. So that's oops, we lost Mona. So that's there she is. So that's part of how the pattern is written, for that to be just a little snugged and not gappy. But if you'll notice from the photo, once you steam that out, they don't want it to flange. Does that make sense?
It just seems like it is pretty significant. It's not just a little snug. It's I'm only on row, I don't know, I've done like 20 rows of stockinette or something like that, and it's very noticeable. So I was concerned after I get all the way through, all the way up to the neck edge, that's going to be a lot of it pulling up as I go.
Well, I haven't knit the new pattern like you're knitting. I did knit my own pattern before last week. My own, I made up my own, doing the same thing that you're doing, knitting it together. And you can see, yes, it pulls down just a little. I did the same thing that you're doing. And it pulls down just a little. I'm sorry, I had it in the bag.
Okay.
It needs to be steamed again.
Yeah, because you can see how yours goes uphill from the garter up. It looks almost like a triangle.
Yeah.
If you hold your
Well,
bottom
there's
completely flat.
there's decreases and everything on this side. My point is it'll be okay. It'll be okay.
Okay.
Don't just
Thank you.
yeah. I would be careful that I didn't knit really tightly. You don't want to you want things to be able to relax, but you'll be fine. And did anybody get a steamer by any chance, or does everybody has a steamer already? So yeah. And the steaming works beautifully, doesn't it? Yeah. See how it makes this gorgeous piece of fabric that's so supple and lovely. Yeah. Yeah. The steaming is a real game changer.
And when you're trying to match up, like the raglan sides, it's much easier to do that if it's steamed.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be very hard. Like one lady, I think that was on last week, she'd already knit the Amanta once, and she said, oh, that makes so much sense. She says it was like an octopus when I knit it the first time, because all the edges were curling in. So yeah. You did beautifully. Absolutely. Okay, Elizabeth or Betsy, which do you prefer? Anyway, I'm asking you questions and you can't talk. Could you write out for me how to do the shape raglan armhole 8 to 9 years old? Shape raglan armhole. Okay, I'm gonna have to start writing names down here. Shape raglan armhole for And 8 to 9 is the next to the last one. Okay. Yeah, I'll write that out for you. I mean, I could almost just tell you right now, it's so short. See, it's that same nomenclature that was used on the back that we were talking about, how I was telling, I'm sorry, there's a lady with the last name of Taggart that I was talking to. I don't know your first name. I'm sorry.
Becky.
Becky. That I was telling Becky, I was showing her what that meant. So let me go through it again with you with the at the shape raglan armhole. It's that same process. Decrease 1 stitch at each end of the next 3 rows. And then on yours will say 0 following 4th rows, so you don't do anything, Betsy. And then so and then on the following, so you go through 4th rows, and then on the following 10 alternate rows. So alternate means every other. So you would do your decrease at each end of 3 rows. Then you would start doing alternate on the next 10 alternate rows. So that would be 10 times. So you would knit 20 rows, and every other one of those rows would be decreased on each end. So you would have 20 stitches down plus 6 stitches down, so 26. Let's do the math. You started out with, where's your stitches here? You started out with 86. So decrease 1 stitch. 3 times 2 is 6. 26. And that leaves you 52 stitches. But I think I had the wrong. What am I doing wrong? Does anyone see here where I'm mathing wrong?
Can you describe again what you're trying to do?
On the shape, she's starting out, she's doing size 8 to 9. So how many stitches do you have, Elizabeth? Do you have 86 stitches when you ended? Are you saying yes? Nod your head. Okay. We're gonna have to do sign language. So you have 86 stitches. Oh, no, I skipped up too far. I'm sorry, that's what's wrong with my math. Then you cast off those 4 stitches at the beginning of the next 2 rows, and that leaves you with 78. And then 78 minus 52 is 26, like I said, that you decreased. Does that make sense, Betsy? Uh-huh, you're welcome.
So what do you think? What do you think about Since this is just a child's sweater and not an adult sweater, a lot of times for children's sweaters, you're more concerned about bulk than you are about strain on parts of the sweater if you're doing for the smaller sizes. What do you think about not casting off at the end of the back and leaving those to put them back on your needle to do the neck rather than doing a pick up and knit?
That's interesting. Let me see. The first thing that I want to say before looking at it carefully is that, I mean, if you can put that together and put that into the pattern and modify the pattern, that's fantastic, you know? I like that way of thinking because, you know, these are, if you're at that point to where you can modify patterns, then go for it. I'm all for it.
And then send it to us.
You don't see a downside to that?
Not just looking at it the way I'm, let me keep on.
I don't know if everybody's following along what I was thinking about doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Instead of
the back and the two fronts have you cast off, but then you end up picking up and knitting. So you end up with that extra stitch basically from the pick up and knit on the wrong side, which adds bulk. And so my thought was, we'll just leave them live. This is just from my machine knitting days eons ago. Leave them live and then put them on, rather than doing a pick up and knit, just slide those stitches onto my needle to start with and just knit them.
How would you join them when you're doing the sleeves?
What do you mean join them? Like sewing the raglan seams together?
Yeah.
Well, you could sew them
I would
together,
do that
I
the
guess.
same way.
Yeah, you could probably do that with them, with the live stitches on a cord, you know. I don't see why.
Yeah, so let's suppose it's like this. You still have, like this is a garter, you know, rather than,
right.
So you'd still have your stitch there and you could sew all the way up to that place where the cord is.
Right.
So you sew it all up and now you've got these little live stitches sticking up
Yeah.
that you would then knit off onto the, that's what I was thinking of.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah. Now, I will say that if you choose not to do it that way, which is perfectly fine. I mean, I'm looking at the sweater. It looks perfectly fine. The steaming very much reduces any bulk. So yeah, there would be a little bit of bulk, Mona, and I'm not criticizing this idea. I think it's a great idea that you,
but that's why I brought it up, because I wanted your feedback.
but I don't think that if someone here listening or someone listening to the recording says, oh, I don't know that I could handle doing that, you know, that's a little beyond me to modify the pattern. I don't think anyone needs to be, you know, overly concerned about the bulk. Again, you take it very, you know, you pick up the stitches very judiciously. You don't pick them up, you know, clumsily way down, right? Just in a careful way, and then steam them. And I don't believe that, I have not heard anyone of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who knit this sweater through just me alone. I've never heard anyone say that they were that seam was too bulky for them. Maybe they thought it.
That's good to know. Thank you.
But I've not heard that. But I still think, Mona, that it's a good idea. You know, if you have that idea and want to do it, you know, go for it. And then be sure and show us next week. So we are not next week, but next time, so we can see how pretty it is. Okay, it's almost 1 o'clock. I know does everyone want to hop off now? I feel like everyone's questions are pretty much good. I'm happy to stay on for another half hour if you have more questions, but you tell me.
I think it's always really helpful, and thank you for doing this.
Yes. Thanks so much. This is very helpful.
My pleasure. And Jane, I will rewrite that yoke. It's a little dense, a little too dense for me just to talk through
Right.
today. I want to be careful and make sure that I don't slip up. But I'll get that for you, and I'll tag you. Is your name Jane, or is it another name in the? Okay.
Oh, on Facebook?
Yeah.
I'm Cornbread.
Okay. Perfect.
It's a long story, but
that's perfect. I just told my boyfriend last night, you know what? We could make such and so for dinner, and we need to have cornbread with that. I was just talking about cornbread. So perfect. I'll find you on Facebook and tag you just as soon. And if you don't see it within the next 3 or 4 days, holler at me because maybe I tagged you incorrectly or, something like that. So.
Well, I can't, I mean, I think it would probably be useful to everybody actually, because it is a little dense to
Yeah,
me.
I'm only going to do it for your size though. So everyone,
Thank you so much.
everyone will have to translate it for their own size. But I think everybody here, you guys have hung in. I'm really proud of you after the hullabaloo of last week. I'm really proud of you guys for hanging in and working your way through the, we had one issue was the translation of the pattern, and I knew going in that was going to be a thing, and that's why I held the knit along to begin with, and then with this other thing coming in. But thank you for being patient and for hanging in. I love spending this time with you, and look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Thank you, Pamela. It's great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.